Tánaiste, once again, I want to appeal to you, as we have been doing since November, I want to remind you, since the middle of November, to publicly support the case that has now been taken by South Africa against Israel for the commission of genocide, and where there is overwhelming evidence that they are committing crimes that
Thank you, Deputy.
are considered to be genocidal under the Genocide Convention.
30 seconds.
I've been closely monitoring developments in the case taken under the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide by South Africa against Israel and the International Court of Justice. The public hearings that took place on the 11th and 12th of January involved the two parties to the proceedings, South Africa and Israel, and focused on the question of provisional measures. No other country has joined them yet. They can't. No, I do anticipate tomorrow that we might have the provisional measures. The court will deliver its order on the provisional measures in the South Africa case tomorrow, Friday the 26th of January. Any provisional measures ordered by the court will be final and binding on the parties to which the orders are addressed. The court's decision on provisional measures will be analysed carefully by the government once it has been published. We will also continue to consult closely with our international partners, including South Africa. Following this analysis and consultations, the government will consider whether to seek permission to intervene, and if so, on what legal basis. This reflects the fact that the statute of the court provides a narrow legal basis on which third parties may be permitted to intervene in such cases, and the need for careful and rigorous legal analysis of the relevant issues. As with all similar cases that have come before the court, states normally seek permission to intervene in the case only once the applicant, in this case South Africa, has filed its memorial, as occurred in the Ukraine versus Russia and Gambia versus Myanmar cases. If states choose to do so in the case, they do not join one side or another. Rather, they submit a statement that asserts their interpretation of the provision of the Convention at issue, or they must identify a specific legal interest affected by the proceedings. Ireland has participated in 2 advisory opinion cases before the International Court of Justice regarding the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory to date. In 2004, Ireland submitted a written statement on the legal consequences of the construction of a wall in the occupied Palestinian territory. In 2022, the United Nations General Assembly requested that the court give an advisory opinion on the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. Ireland voted in favour of this resolution and submitted a written statement to the court last July. The oral proceedings in this case will take place in February, and Ireland will participate. The government's position in the current conflict remains that we need an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the immediate and unconditional release of hostages, the end of Hamas rocket attacks on Israel, and rapid, full, safe and unhindered access for humanitarian aid to Gaza. These actions cannot wait for the court's decision on provisional measures. They need to happen now. As I've stated on several occasions in this House, the Occupied Territories Bill would not be compatible with EU law and would not be implementable. This is the clear legal advice on that matter, and the government will therefore not be taking it forward. Ireland's opposition to illegal Israeli settlements is grounded in international law. To adopt a unilateral approach that runs contrary to legal advice would undermine Ireland's stance on this issue and our broader advocacy on compliance with international law. Thank you.
See, once again, the government is dancing around its obligations under the Genocide Convention, okay? Forget about all the other stuff you said. This is about the Genocide Convention. You were asked in November in the Dáil to discharge your obligations under the Genocide Convention, which require all signatories, as soon as they hear of the possibility of a genocide taking place, they have to examine whether they believe such a thing is taking place and take action to stop it. That's what the genocide, it's in Irish law since 1973. You haven't done that, unless you're telling me you have done it, and that was in November. We get to January, South Africa does it. You still pour cold water on what they're saying, suggesting maybe it isn't a genocide, giving excuses why you can't get involved. At that stage, we'd asked you to instigate, at least examine the question in November. You did nothing. And even now you won't issue a statement to say you agree with South Africa. Do you agree with them? Because the world can see the genocide in front of us. Do you agree, and will you support them?
Deputy, as usual, you distort the truth. And I've observed your performance on all of this, and it is a performance. And it's more about propaganda. It's more about undermining the government here in respect of its position on Palestine unfairly, and it beggars belief what you're at one level. At another level, I understand what you're at in terms of the prism through which you see the world. And your idea is only you is the holy grail in respect of the support for Palestinian people. If you go internationally, people perceive Ireland and the Irish government as being very strong supporters of the people of Palestine. And what I've said to you is this, and you've been wrong again. You've been wrong again in terms of your approach. The provisional measures that are being sought, we have sought them. We have sought them. We have participated, one of the few countries legally in the court, but we do things properly, rigorously, and with analysis. And I would put it to you, Deputy, for a person who talks loudly about wanton murder and destruction, why have you failed to condemn the Hamas attack on October the 7th? And why in that statement that your party issued some weeks ago did you seek to almost give implicit condoning of that terrible atrocity? There's no consistency in your approach.
Can we have some consistency with the times, please? Deputy.
Yeah. I hold Israel responsible for the violence that we've seen. Okay? That's my view. From 1948, and it's not just me who's saying that, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, every decent Israeli historian acknowledges, Ilan Papp, you can go through the list, about decades of ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, of illegal occupation, of apartheid, of legal settlements, of a 16-year-long siege of Gaza. Inevitably, that produces violence. And now we are seeing the absolutely genocidal logic of the apartheid state. And the government stands by and does nothing. And whatever you may think about who's to blame, what is clear is there's a genocide happening. And it was clear in November when you were asked, and you have obligations, and you still have danced around the obligation for states to act, including unilaterally, to prevent genocide. It'll be too late in 2 years' time. Too late for the Palestinian people.
Thank you. Did you want to come in, Deputy?
Yeah. Could I first of all say, in response to Deputy Boyd Barrett, that your failure or your deliberate decision not to condemn Hamas is quite shocking in itself and utterly inconsistent with what you're asking government to do in respect of other issues. Women were raped and then subsequently murdered on October the 7th. Children were killed. Children were abducted. And I saw you on a clip where you actually tried to protest that you didn't quite know what happened that day. You were on a university platform. That is reprehensible, your position. You condone murder by one side. You do. I'm saying it. I'm saying it. Yes, you do. You just have. Well, why don't you condemn it? Why don't you condemn it? And I want to make the point, Deputy, if I may, through the Chair. Sorry, Deputy, I have asked you...
Tánaiste, please. Yeah. We're going to do this through the Chair, yeah. and it's a question and a response to a question.
Yeah. But it's a very serious issue, because the Deputy is accusing government of dancing around. We're not dancing around anything, Deputy. And we have a strong record internationally. And when we go before courts, they're not debating chambers. They're not places where you can dance around. Because that's the sum total of the substance you bring to this issue. You dance around it all the time. You accuse others of not participating. You accuse others of being complicit in crime. It seems to me your main aim is to try and undermine other parties in this House, as opposed to dealing with the substance of the issue. How can we improve, how can we help Palestinians practically on the ground? Deputy Howland's question is valid. The Israelis may very well ignore the provisional findings of the court. That is a concern, Deputy. And that is why we, parallel with dealing with the court case, which we will, and we'll do it properly, as we've done in terms of the advisory opinion with the UN, and we'll be participating in the court in February. But we have to, through international pressure, get this war stopped.
Thank you,
because too many children are dying in Gaza, and I condemn that too.
Thank you.
I condemn what's going on in Gaza. I condemn the continuing bombardment of Gazans, with the result of innocent women and children being killed. There's a consistency in the government's approach. We'll do it properly.
Okay.